What's going on, guys? Foster here, and I am back with another video. In today's video I'll be doing an in-depth Xin Zhao Jungle guide. Xin Zhao won the poll, as you can see right now. If you guys want to vote for the next poll, for the next champion guide, make sure to do so by clicking the notification bell or just keeping an eye out on the community tab when the poll goes live. Polls last for 24 hours. After 24 hours, whoever has the most votes will be the next champion I make a guide on. So with that being said, let's just get right into the guide. Now, for Xin Zhao, there are 3 potential rune options, with 2 being better than the other one. The potential rune options are Conqueror, Hail of Blades, or Phase Rush. Now, in most situations, Hail of Blades or Conqueror is better, because Conqueror will scale better for a little bit of damage, and then Hail of Blades will be better for early dueling potential. The only exception would be to go for Phase Rush if the enemy team is extremely difficult to catch. So they have a lot of escape potential, a lot of mobility in general. Then in those situations you would need Phase Rush to catch up with people, and it's just a standard Phase Rush page would look like Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak. Then you can opt to go Celerity if you want, but all of these 3 are fine. This will just give you a bit more damage when engaging people on high HP. Celerity, more move speed is never bad. And if you're having trouble catching people, then Celerity usually makes more sense. And then Water Walking is just very good in general. And you can easily combine this with Relentless Hunter and Zombie Ward, or potentially Eyeball Collection. You can also go Sudden Impact. However, I do think that Eyeball Collection overall gives you more damage potential on Xin going for a build setup like this. So this is just a Phase Rush setup. It's very focused around mobility and being able to stick with people, because usually high mobility champions will be very squishy, so you don't actually need the additional damage. But it's an option only for those situations. Now here, it is completely up to you whether you want to play an early game Xin Zhao or a more so scaling Xin Zhao, because Hail of Blades is much better early on, and if you can snowball from that and look for early pressure like that, then that's good. You usually want to play an early game Xin Zhao if you have more scaling laners, because then you can make up for a situation like that and eventually get carried on, get carried later. If your team is completely early game, it's usually better to go for a little bit more scaling to kind of balance out. But like a page with Hail of Blades looks like Hail of Blades. Then you get Sudden Impact with this, because it's the biggest damage option you have, especially early on. Then you can get Zombie Ward or Eyeball Collection. I would recommend picking up Zombie Ward if you are, I'd say, probably playing Diamond 3+. Anything lower than that, Eyeball Collection is just better, because there are not enough wards being placed, because vision control kind of lacks in lower elos. If the higher you go, the better Zombie Ward becomes, because people ward more, and then you get more stacks on this, and also more vision out of it, really. So that's the option there. And then Relentless Hunter, because you do want that additional movement speed to be able to pressure the map like a lot better. Now, secondary options in this case include going for Tenacity if you want. If you do need it, you can combine the Lights and Tenacity with Last Stand. Last Stand's a very good one on Xin Zhao, because you're going into the fight, diving in a lot, getting hit a lot. Obviously, you can use your ultimate to block some damage, but you are going to be low and fighting people at lower HPs a lot. So this is actually a very valuable one. Other options, you can also go Last Stand with Triumph if you don't need the extra Tenacity. You do, like, if you go for a specific build setup with a Strix, then you don't necessarily need Tenacity, because you're already going to have a lot of it. The other secondary option would be going Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking. This is a very strong combination as well, because Nimbus Cloak allows you to close the distance between people a lot easier, meaning that getting Hail of Blades auto attacks off becomes a lot easier as well. So that's very nice. And also Water Walking is very, very good for Scuttle Crab fights and early game river fights. Also helps with roaming potential. So in general, a setup like this, if I'm going Hail of Blades, this is probably what I would take to pressure and just do as much early game as possible. Now for the scaling option, you have Conqueror, which is Conqueror, then Triumph, and you can go Tenacity for, again, CC reduction if the enemy team does have a lot of it. You can also go Alacrity if that's not the case. You can even go Bloodline, really. That's up to you. I would say that the, Alacrity helps in a little bit more going for Conquer, because you're not going to have all of the extra attack speed from the Hail of Blades. So if they don't have a lot of hard CC, then, or just all of CC in general, then the Alacrity is better. And then go for Last Stand here as well, simply because it just synergizes really well with Xin Zhao's playstyle. Now secondary runes here basically just want to be the Relentless Hunter and the Zombie Ward or Eyeball Collection. You want to get this on this specific page setup, since you won't have the roam ability, I guess, if that's the thing. Then you won't have it, so the extra the extra movement speed from this allows you to roam around the map faster, basically get counter jungle in faster or get counter ganks in faster, and that's really what you're looking for. So a setup like this, again, Eyeball Collection or Zombie Ward, depending on your elo range. If you're going for a Conqueror setup, then going Sudden Impact really doesn't help you all that much, simply because you're not playing for a very, very early game. You're not playing for early burst damage, and this just overall does a little bit less than any of these two would. So yeah, that's basically the rune options for Xin Zhao. If you do have any questions on this, make sure to put those in the comments below, and I'll move on to the item build now. Alright, so for the item build for Xin Zhao, we have the Hunter's Machete start with a refillable potion. This is the best start you can go for, because you are going for either a red buff start or a 3-camp clear, and in either situation, Hunter's Machete will give you the best clear speed on that. And then looking for pressure on ganks or maybe invading and all that type of stuff, this just helps you get there the fastest, and yeah, that's definitely what you want to go for. Now, as a main initial item you want to get on Xin Zhao is the Red Smite with the Warrior enchant. You want to get the Red Smite one because the Blue Smite doesn't really help you all that much. It's more sort of dueling potential that you're looking for with the Red Smite. Blue Smite's a little bit of mobility, but if you use your E properly with your Conqueror setup, you should be fine to get there or to stick with people. And if you are going for a Hill of Blades or a Phase Rush setup, then you're definitely going to have enough mobility to stick with people, so you definitely don't need the additional Blue Smite for that. So going Conqueror, this kind of becomes a little bit more skill based to be able to use Red Smite with that, instead of Blue Smite by just using your E properly and all that to make sure that they don't get away from you. But the Warrior enchant is a very important enchant to go for, because you do scale off of attack damage pretty well, and also just in general, auto attack damage goes up. So the moment you pick up the Warrior is the moment you're going to get a pretty big damage spike as well. So that's the main initial item you want to go for. Boots for Xin Zhao basically just include going for either ninjas or mercs. It depends on if the enemy team has a lot of CC or not. So you can go for mercs if they do. If they don't, then you can just go ninjas. If they have a average amount of CC, it's not an insane amount, you can also go just go ninja tabai. And maybe you have the tenacity in your runes if you're going a Conqueror page, for example. Or the next item will help you with the tenacity as well. Now, the best main item you can go for on Xin Zhao would be the Strix. There is a lot of Xin Zhao players that go for different type of stuff, but in general, Strix is the best all-round thing because it allows you to go in. You also gain a nice amount of damage from this, but it allows you to go in, get a lot of extra HP, also get the lifeline trigger, which gives you the tenacity, which could combine very well with ninjas if you want to get extra damage reduction. But overall, this item, you can stack it early with this, basically granting you extra maximum HP as well. That can be stacked up. So building into this is a very efficient thing to do, and this allows you from that point onward to still make a lot of options build-wise. There are Xin players as well that would opt to just go for Triforce initially, and there are also people that just go Black Cleaver just as a first item, which is all fine. You can go for all of those options and you would do fine with those, but in general, as a safety thing and just an overall synergy with Xin Zhao's kit, Strix Rush actually does a lot for you and will help you survive fights, engage fights, and just help you a lot in general, really. So I would highly recommend just going Strix every time as a first item and then building from there. So from there on out, it is basically depending on your game situation and how fed you are, how good you're doing. If you're doing very well after a Strix, you can go for Triforce still. Then Triforce will just give you a lot of damage, and then obviously a Strix effect will synergize as well with Triforce, giving you a good amount of extra damage there. It's just a very good damage combination, these two items. If you are, if your team is, for example, full AD at this point, you can also go Cleaver to help your team with Armor Shred, which is a very good thing as well. Or if you're just looking to get more Armor Shred in, then Black Cleaver, is also very, very good. Other options include going for a Blade of the Rune King as well. You can also combine like this setup right here. And if you're facing a bunch of tanks or a bunch of people that are hard to kill, you can go for the Strix into a Black Cleaver to get armor shred, and then into a Blade of the Rune King to get the HP shred from that as well, synergizing with Black Cleaver on top of each other. You in those situations can also skip Strix if it's a very tanky enemy team, and just like, because tanky enemy teams basically mean that if you go for a setup like this, they don't really do any damage to you in general, because tanks go for prolonged fights. So if it happens to be like 3 tanks or something on the enemy team, then going for a Black Cleaver into maybe a Blade, or Blade into a Black Cleaver, is also a very, very good choice. So that's an option there. Now, if you're not doing too great, going for a Strix first will allow you to transition into a stone plate as well. Strix offers you a good amount of HP with the like lifeline trigger, as well as the 450 HP it basically gives in and of itself. And then stone plate's a very cheap and very good item, because it basically gives you 80 armor, 80 magic resist, because you want to dive into the enemy team and just use a lot of their attention, focus that on you. And then with stone plate active, you're going to be extremely tanky. With your ultimate, you're going to basically block out a lot of damage on top of that, and this would be a very, very good item to pick up if you aren't doing too great in a game and just want to be frontlining for your team, making engages happen for your team, and just making a lot of plays possible. Situations like this would like basically mean that you want to like queue something twice, so maybe a ward or a dragon or a turret or whatever, and then go in and just knock them up. Whatever target you pick, knock them up, press ultimate, allow your team to engage on that, and if they start focusing you down, basically your ult will block a lot of damage initially, and then you just proc stone plate on top of that to tank even more damage. So that's a very cheap and like very functional item you can pick up if you're not doing too great at this stage in the game and you want to be more useful for your team, really. So that's an option there. Now, if this transitions into you actually coming back into a game, you can still go for like a Black Cleaver to help with armor shred, or you can continue on the more tanky path. That would also be fine. It's just like an option at that point. Good like tank items would include just going for like Adaptive Helmet if it's good, or Spirit Visage if it just helps that. Like it really, you can also go Locket if you want to go more of a supportive route. It's a very optional choice as well. Another great item against magic resist, or for magic resist, sorry, would be a Wit's End. If you're doing pretty well, you can go Strix into Wit's End, which is a very good option as well. If you're facing a bunch of AP champions, this is going to give you a significant damage increase still, but then also give you a lot of additional magic resist, allowing you to survive better, which is a very good option there. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of options for Xin to go for after like picking up a Strix. It's the most flexible item you could get, because if you're rushing a Triforce, you're basically, it costs a good amount of money. Like Strix isn't cheap either, but the like this component right here already makes you very tanky. So even if you have struggles getting there, then this will help you out quite a bit. Whilst going for like any of these items give you less tankiness, which makes you easier to kill. So if the game's going very shitty, then going Triforce already isn't worth it, and then this item would also already do more. But it also is very flexible, because it allows you to go in, tank a lot of damage, and then build into damage later if it helps. If it doesn't, then you can go Strix and play defensive off of the same build as well. So yeah, that's basically it for the build on Xin Zhao. Like any of these tank items basically conclude into other tank items that are just good into the enemy team. So anything that would work very well into an enemy team situation, you could just pick up. Again, Knight's Vow, you could use this as well to help like teammates and all that to be more supportive. You can literally go for like a supportive setup like this and be very useful to your team whilst you haven't had the greatest game yourself, or just go like damage with the Blade of the Rune King, Black Cleaver, or Triforce, or anything like that. So yeah, that's just it for the Xin Zhao build. If you have any questions on it, please make sure to put those in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer those questions for you. And yeah, if you guys have enjoyed this video so far, please make sure to hit the thumbs up button. This helps me quite a lot in the YouTube algorithm stuff. And let's just move on to the gameplay section now. Alright, welcome to the gameplay section of this guide. As you can see, we're following this Xin Zhao into an Echo matchup. This Xin Zhao is a Grandmaster EOS Xin Zhao main. He has over 400 games played with nearly a 60% win rate, so definitely got a good one here. Xin Zhao into Echo is kind of a, I guess, early game based matchup for Xin Zhao. If you can get ahead in the early game with Xin, then you should be able to win fairly easily. However, Echo does outskill you. So in any normal situations where you go even, Echo will come out ahead. Now, as for the early game start, initially you always want to make sure that right as soon as you get out of base, you want to make sure that you place your ward in a defensive position to basically allow you to get a read on the enemy jungler. So what he does here in this situation is he places it in this spot. This isn't the greatest spot, especially if you're gonna start red buff, which I think he will, since Xin Zhao usually starts red and looks for like a level 2 pressure play, or just does a 3 camp clear and then looks for pressure. So in any other situation, it is usually better to go for a ward on your other buff camp, or just like, yeah. So if you were to start red buff, you'd want to ward this early and then reset, get a red trinket. Red trinket's very important to get, so it doesn't really matter where you place your ward initially. I do, however, think that this ward doesn't really give him anything, because Echo isn't the type of jungler that can invade very easily. So placing it more defensively towards this blue buff, for example, or maybe his own, like the enemy's red buff, would have been a bit more beneficial for him. Either way, he still places the ward, which is fine. I would personally recommend you, if you're gonna play Xin and place wards, try to place him either defensively on your other buff that you're not starting on, or try to place him aggressively on the enemy's buff camp so you can invade. Because Xin Zhao is a very strong duelist early on, especially if you would run Hail of Blades, then that's even gonna be stronger. Either way, it's very important that you reset for your red trinket. The maximum time you can reset on is about 52 seconds. And if you press reset, then you'll be more than in time for your buff camp, and that will keep your ward on the map for the longest period of time. If this Xin Zhao would have... I don't exactly know how this went down, actually. I could go back. Maybe, like, alright. So they tried to extend fight the LeBlanc, and then they, like, continued that, I guess. That's either or, doesn't really matter. So as you can see, starting on red buff, very important. You don't necessarily have to, but if you're going for a level 2 gank, you're going to have to start red buff no matter what. Which usually, if the enemy mid laner isn't very mobile, then it is a great play, especially if you have heal, because then the knockup is basically guaranteed. But if they are mobile like LeBlanc, you can still opt to go for like maybe a blue start, even on this side of the map, right? So you can still maybe start here. That wasn't possible because of this invade for this game specifically, but it is a possible play, and then go for blue, Gromp, and then red, and then take this red to either gank mid a little bit later to let the wave push, because LeBlanc's most likely going to push in a melee champion like Katarina, or to go bot lane with it, because Caitlyn and Leona will probably push in Karthus early on. So that is something he could have opted for as well, and something you need to keep in mind. If you're going for a level 2 gank on either top or mid, then you go start red and gank. And if you're going for, well, a extended play, like let's say he wanted to play around mid and bot lane, he could have also started blue buff, done blue, Gromp, red buff, have red a little bit longer, more power play on the map really. And he could have, in that point, also invaded Echo if he would have started like, if Echo would have started like red buff and he did the clear like that, he could have gone to Echo's blue and contested him there, because there's no way an Echo beats a Xin Zhao early game. So that is a possible play he could have made. In this situation, it looks like he opted for the red buff start into a pressure play for the LeBlanc gank maybe, or an invade on his blue buff, which he was initially planning. But this is where the sweeper comes in, as you can see. He uses the sweeper to check for vision, so he knows if he can go for maybe an invade or maybe a gank. He does get spotted in this situation by clearing the ward, but LeBlanc, well, being LeBlanc, it's kind of hard to kill in mid lane like that because of her W. She has like a lot of ways to get out, so in this case he doesn't really get anything. Now that's what you see right there, is Echo being quite low. If he would have opted for maybe going for the invade still, he would have easily gotten that, because Echo's usual clear path would be something like, if he starts red, it's going to be red, Raptors, Wolves, and then blue, Gromp, something like that. So he would have had plenty of time. For Echo, it's pretty difficult to go red into Gromp and blue buff, since he doesn't really have the greatest single target camp clear speed, unless the camp gets a little bit low. Echo's main clear speed kicks in when he hits level 3. So that's something to keep in mind against like champions like this that are weak early game. You definitely want to pressure, which he did kind of do. In this case, he ganked the mid lane instead of opting for a pressure play for either Echo or the enemy bot lane by, well, starting red buff. So as you can see, his clear path is still going to be going from a mid lane gank, which kind of puts some pressure on LeBlanc. She definitely, that definitely gives Katarina some breathing room. Because as you can see, the early game right now isn't going so great. The enemy team has 3 kills on his team, and yeah. So he definitely needs to look for some early aggression. That's how Xin Zhao is going to win this. If he doesn't do that, then Echo is just going to be ahead. So as you can see, like, basically still the same concept applies. You want to clear these 3 camps. These, like, other camps early on aren't ideal for Xin Zhao to clear. As soon as you start to get some levels and you start to get some levels in your W, then all of these camp clears become a lot easier because you're going to have a lot more AoE damage. But early on, it's better to go for a 3 camp clear, look for some ganks, look for a scuttle crab pressure, and then also maybe an invade on the enemy jungler. So as you can see, the Xin is just waiting for a gank here. He will have his trinket up, or should have his trinket up soon to sweep this potentially. This is something why Red Trinket is so good for early pressure junglers like Xin Zhao. You can see if it's warded. He could have waited here longer if he didn't have this red trinket, and yeah. So it's the ward right there, and then Scuttle spawn, so he can just do Scuttle Crab, which is something he just played for, right? So that's basically the ideal like clear for Xin early. He did put some pressure on the mid lane in this game, which personally I'd say his better option, knowing it's an Echo, would have been starting blue buff and clearing down. But either way, this is just a fine situation for him to be in. He played for those 3 camps and then played for Scuttle, still looking for some like gank pressure and all that. Maokai's wave currently is basically pushed in. This is freezable for Maokai, so Shen has to walk up. If he waits here long enough, this might happen into a gank, but I don't, you know, it just depends on what goes on with Shen here. So let's see. He gets the engage, which is good, and then basically off of the knock-up, the Xin is going to get this kill. So waiting in this case paid off for him. He definitely needs to help push this wave, because as you can see, Maokai is extremely low. Now sure, Shen has Ignite, which means he doesn't have TP. That makes it even better to push, but if he were to have TP as well, you would need to push this wave, because apparently Maokai teleported already. I'm not sure why. But yeah, like, you need to help your top laner push this. If you walk away from a situation like this, then you actually put your top laner behind with that gank, which is definitely not ideal. And something to keep in mind. Just always, if you get a kill, generally speaking, you should help push the wave. If you don't, then you could, like, the only situation you wouldn't is if the top laner is pretty much full HP, full mana, recently backed or something, and then has like the wave in a freeze position, like right here or something, then of course you don't want to push that out, because that's actually a disadvantage to your top laner. Right. That's actually okay. I think, right, so in a lot of situations, if you see this play right here, you see this going on. The Karthus is low, Thresh is reasonably okay in HP wise. This is a very, very big minion wave, which means that a dive is very much possible. Echo recently died, I think off the dive potentially. Not exactly sure where he died. Okay, right there. So he definitely took some damage. LeBlanc is missing off the map right now. Maybe we saw her bot lane just recently, but in this situation you can definitely not. This is a mistake from him. You can definitely not afford to walk to your Raptor camp. One, this isn't very, for a couple reasons. One, this isn't very clear efficient, because if you walk out of base and instantly run to your Raptor camp, then this camp still gets left up, and this camp is actually worth quite a lot of experience. Also, being in this position instead of being right here actually helps his team more, preventing a dive and Karthus being able to clear this wave. So in general, right now he should have been here clearing this camp to help back up his bot lane. That would have been more clear efficient and would have also prevented this from happening. Basically, if he was here, he could have prevented this entire thing from happening. The LeBlanc would not have gotten the kill, and if she would have gotten the kill, he would have just been here to instantly kill the LeBlanc. He probably would realize this. Okay, I mean, it's a Grandmaster player. He probably just realized that he made a mistake. But he makes up for this mistake by not being on the bot side and actually sees LeBlanc running back to mid lane, which is just a really good situation for him, of course, because he can now use his control ward that he has or use his sweeper trinket as well. Both options would be fine, but you know LeBlanc's going to come back to the mid lane. She has full HP. She has double buff. There's no reason for her to reset at that point. She might have gold. Actually, she should have reset. If you look at that gold, she should have reset. But in this case, the LeBlanc just runs back to mid lane, and the Xin Zhao catches her off guard. Now, this is one of the things Xin Zhao is very, very good at. Xin is an extremely good duelist early on. If you're fighting anyone 1v1, you're definitely going to come out ahead, especially if you have Red Smite or Hail of Blades. Hail of Blades in the early game is completely like insane. It does fall off a little bit, but early game you're going to get the knock up and the auto attacks off really fast. And yeah, as you can see right here, he does get the LeBlanc for that eventually. Now, again, he could have made this a little bit better, because going to your Krug camp is a bit more clear efficient. And also, he would have prevented this entire dive from happening, and probably would have punished the LeBlanc and maybe the Caitlyn Leona as well, because he does have a Thresh, which like Thresh could have landed him into the fight and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of a yeah, so-and-so play, let's say. It's by no means a terrible play, but this isn't very, like, as you can see right now, it's about 6 minutes in game, and this camp still hasn't been cleared yet. I'm pretty sure. Can I check that? No, not really. All right. The camp hasn't been cleared yet, which loses him on a fair amount of experience. I'm on the wrong side of the thing. Alright, so blue. Yeah. Alright, so all that aside, really. Moving on, Xin Zhao, especially in higher elos, champions that are good in early game fights, you're looking at skirmishes, especially if the support realizes this, and the support player can easily roam with you, and you should roam with your support as well. Clearing on Xin isn't super efficient, because like if you're perma clearing all these camps, Xin Zhao, like mainly the AoE camps, Xin Zhao has some trouble clearing those. And yeah, so you definitely want to look for pressure and look for place. You can shut down and get the kills on Echo very easily. You see Echo on mid lane right here, and you pretty much know that his top side is down at this point, so he's definitely going to walk towards this direction, which is what they realize. And off of this, I mean, you just wait for Echo to show up. Thresh lands the hook, Xin goes in, Echo dies. It's a good catch. Just off realizing his pathing and the way he was going to walk. Now Xin makes a very good play here by punishing the Echo for basically dying, and he takes his camps, which gives him a good amount of experience. As you can see, this camp's leveled up and everything, so he's definitely going to get a nice amount of experience from this. Getting very close to 6 as well right now. Alright, so Gromp. He might skip this. The Thresh and the Karthus Thresh right here, they're getting engaged on. Thresh is a little bit, I wouldn't say out of position, but in the enemy's eyes, he's kind of out of position, really. So yeah, he drops the Gromp, which is a good play. He doesn't have, if he would have had Smite up, he could have done a little bit more damage to the Gromp there. But because he didn't have Smite, he didn't have the time to finish the Gromp there, and instead, like, help the Thresh get these kills. And that's obviously the better play, to be there for your teammates and help them get kills and prevent them from dying. He does get, like, killed. That's really Karthus' fault, I think. Let me see. So goes in, gets the Leona. Yeah, this Karthus definitely needed to walk up. He has exhaust up right now, and this Xin is taking a lot of damage from Caitlyn. All of this time, he should have walked towards Caitlyn and actually exhausted her to prevent all of the damage coming in. Because now the Xin Zhao gave up his shutdown gold basically for him not exhausting, which is a little bit of a silly mistake from him. But, I mean, I guess it happens. It's solo queue, so it is what it is. He gets his jungle item now, and now he gets this camp. If he's smart about it, alright, this is another slight mistake, which, I don't know, like this right here, as you know as well, this camp isn't really worth anything because it's a level 1 camp. So basically the ideal situation for any level 1 camp you have is, at this stage in the game, 7 minutes in, he will take way too much time clearing the entire thing. And for a level 1 Krug camp, that really isn't worth it right now, because other camps that are up are higher levels, and he also has the buff camps up. He can do like buff camps and then also look for a potential Rift Herald that will spawn soon. So anytime he wastes on killing a level 1 camp for an extended period of time really isn't that worth it, and something you guys should keep in mind as well. Especially playing an early game jungler like Xin, you want to be as efficient as possible with your time, which basically means that the moment this camp dies, the moment you kill the initial small and the big one, you just want to walk away And in this case, he looks to spend a lot of time on clearing the small ones, which really don't give him too much experience. So that's a bit of a mistake there, because by this time, he could have already been in like a position to be potentially on his blue buff, or maybe pathing towards that already. And yeah, that would have been just a better situation for him to be in, because right now the Echo is actually doing it, as you can see in the Fog of War, really. Yeah, so by this time he should have done the Crux, just killed the big and the small one, walked to his red buff, and maybe from red walk to blue. That would have been an option. What he did here is also an option. He could have still lost his blue buffs, but in this case he would have been at the Rift Herald at exactly spawn time, which is something he could have used to pressure. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to clear camps. If the camps are level 1, like especially the Krug camp, if it's level 1 and it's this late in the game, please don't try to full clear that camp, because you basically gain nothing from it, and that's just very much not ideal. So right here he walks up, realizes his blue is gone, and the Echo is going to gank the Maokai. Now basically off that, he sees that gank happening instantly. He gets the counter gank pretty much instantly, which is very, very good. And yeah. So he does get the double kill there. He pushes this out, which is very good, and then he can get some free platings. He should get 2, maybe 3, because he knows Shen doesn't have it teleport up, so definitely get a couple platings here is definitely worth the time. So he gets 3 platings for 160, which is a very good amount of gold. Now he can do the Rift Herald right here, which, yeah, you see happen as well. This is also kind of playing into everything that he did here earlier, because he could have caught the Echo doing his blue buff, prevented the entire top gank from happening, which, I mean, sure would have given him 2 kills less, but he would have had the Rift Herald. And now the Rift Herald is actually very contestable for the enemy, because Katarina died. And yeah, the only other trade-off he could have made was skipping top plates for the Rift Herald, and that is really not that ideal. Alright. Gets collapsed on and dies for that, which is, it's kind of whatever. He's looking for some, for a play to make, he's looking to make a play happen, looking to catch something, maybe engage something, as you can see right here. One of Xin Zhao's best, one of the better things he can do, or he's good at, is just going for a single target and instantly deleting that target. Because if you have ranged champions on the enemy team, like Caitlyn for example has massive range, she would have to walk into your ultimate range to actually damage you. And if you can catch like a Echo, LeBlanc, or maybe even Leona, even though Leona is fairly tanky, if you can catch them off guard and just quickly delete them, because you do have a lot of damage output, then you should be fine to just do that within your ult time, and that will make a fight very easy. So he sees the Leona right here, out of position. He can engage this. He can block a lot of damage from the Caitlyn, from just anyone that is out of his ult range. So he actually has a free position there. If he would not have had his ultimate there, he probably would have just died instantly, really. Thresh also lanterns him closer, and his ult basically allows him to survive. So looking for any types of those picks, if you can just use your ultimate. Your ultimate also knocks people back that aren't targeted by you, so you can definitely just make an engage, knock people out of your ultimate range, and then just do a lot of damage to a squishy target, which if it's like the ADC or the mid laner is going to result in a free kill. So that's something to look for. Now ideally combo-wise on Xin Zhao, is you want to go in, and then with your E obviously, and then auto attack Q, and you can use your Q, use your W between any Q you want to. Ideally, if you have Hail of Blades, you just want to use your auto attacks from your Q as fast as possible to make sure that you get your knock-up off, and then the W hit is free. But in any other combo situation with Conqueror, you can just use your auto attack into a Q into instant W, and then that will weave in between your auto attack, so you don't really lose any time on it. So those are really your options. You want to do it after a Q auto attack or after the knock-up from your Q. You don't want to go in and EW, because you definitely need the Q first, or auto attack Q first, because that's more damage efficient. Alright, now off this, his camp's actually leveled up, so full clearing it now does make sense, giving him a lot more experience than clearing a level 1 camp. And right now his situation is just he needs to get his jungle clear here. All of his camps are up. He needs to make sure that he gets some of his farm. Xin Zhao usually has lower CS, as a Xin Zhao player, you usually have lower CS counts than, for example, a Karthus or an Evelyn would. because you are playing for early pressure and your initial win condition is the early pressure to get ahead, to get your teammates ahead. And yeah, that's really it, because you kind of fall off later in the game, and you do have to realize this. So Rift Herald spawn top lane, he's gonna react to this, making sure that the Rift Herald doesn't like get free turret plates or anything like that. Skipping like a Gromp camp for this really like is quite worth it. Alright, he sees the Caitlyn pushed up in mid lane, which basically just means that if he can flank her, he can get a free kill. Also, this is why he used the sweeper quite early. If you right here, you can see it. I'll go back. So right now he sees the Caitlyn pushing mid lane on the mini map, and he uses his sweeper right here. This basically shows him any wards that he would walk over to potentially gank this Caitlyn, like flank her from behind. And yeah. So right here he doesn't see any wards, which means that the Caitlyn is just gonna be pushed up and be a free kill. Caitlyn doesn't really do anything to escape that. He can easily save his E to catch up with anything she does. He also comes from an advantageous position, so she'd have to get a very far distance, which she tried with her E and her flash. A very big thing about Xin Zhao ganks as well is if you don't have to use your E to get in range of somebody, don't use it. You need to use it after they either use an escape or use their flash to still catch up to them. So right here you can go walk up into melee range. This counts for any gank that you do. If you can walk into melee range and just hit it first, and then use your E after closing the distance, that's better. As you can see, the timing he used on his W was the timing he would have hit a knock-up with his third Q, which basically guarantees him to land his W. And right here, Caitlyn uses flash, heal, and everything. And he didn't really get in range. He could have flashed for it, but obviously his ultimate still does some damage, so he just uses ultimate to kill the Caitlyn there. So this is a very good flank, and like very good setup as well, with a sweeping trinket from a very far distance to know if the Caitlyn, or if the enemy team had any vision to see if the Caitlyn knew he was there. They get the turret. Karthus walks up, which is quite a like silly mistake in that situation, because you don't know where the enemy team is. They could just be there to well, catch you out, which basically happened to Karthus right there. The Xin and the Thresh walked back, which was a better play. As of right now, they just have to walk away because the enemy team is collapsing on them and they don't really have the position anymore. So that was really just a mistake by Karthus. Ideally, the Xin would have just walked away and let him die because, well, there was no reason for the Karthus to walk up in that specific situation. Alright, he completes his Sterak's here, which is a very strong buy right now, allowing him to just frontline for his team and just make the engages happen, which is very, very good. And he goes for the Leona, the Thresh and the Karthus go for the Caitlyn, which is fine. Basically, what he's doing is he's keeping the CC lock off of his carry, or his Karthus really. Probably not his carry this specific game, but usually his carry. Now Rift Herald's up, he definitely wants to make sure that you can pick this up. If you can just pick any Rift Herald up really, those types of early game champions like Xin Zhao and all those, like maybe a Lee Sin as well, it's less so farm focused and more so objective control focused, and then also assisting your laners focused, which is what he's doing. His farm is quite, quite low for like decent, like good clear speed jungler standards, but for a Xin Zhao this is a fine amount of farm to have. Just have the Rift Heralds, have the lane pressure, and yeah. So with his Rift Herald you can look to open up the base at any point. If you win a fight, you could look to just push the wave out completely and like break this turret down really, really easily. So ideally he would just holds on to it for a little bit and until they win a fight, which might be here already. Alright, let's just go back here a bit. So initially they dive the Shen, it looks like. The Katarina flanks from behind, insta-kills the Caitlyn because she basically just has a lot of damage. Katarina getting resets. And right here, this is basically kind of a zoning thing. He sees a LeBlanc, which is obviously already a free kill. LeBlanc, on the other hand, kind of is a bit more of a troublesome kill since she does have a lot of escapes. But this also counts for zoning, because if he goes on LeBlanc, LeBlanc's forced to back away, and then he can clean up the fight a little bit later. Yeah, using his ultimate there to stall it out as long as possible, really, to prevent him from getting damage. He also still had his Strix proc, which allows him to tank a lot more, and all of the CC as well, and then Carthus ult comes in to get the kills. Now, basically running from top straight to the dragon, because objective control is very important, and then using his reset here, building into a Triforce looks like. And he's getting some of his camps. It's all fine. The enemy, like, ideally your team would have wanted to reset, I think, in this specific situation. Did they already back? They already backed, and his pathing really isn't that good here. Yeah, there's... all of his team doesn't really have a lot of gold, so there's no reason for them to back. Which basically means that he should have just taken the red buff and ran through, ran here to the mid lane to the fight, to use the Rift Herald to potentially push this out, or to be there for backup on the fight. Currently clearing this Krug camp takes him way too long and isn't very efficient, so that's something to keep in mind as well. If you are needed in fights or positions, don't just clear your camps, especially if you can't do it very, very fast, because Xin Zhao does take a fair amount of time clearing these types of camps. Taking like a single target camp is very quick, but you're no Evelyn, for example. Like Evelyn just, if you would have been Evelyn in this situation, you could have just done this, one-shot the camp, ran up, and still made it, probably clearing all 3 camps and still got into the fight in time. But because of your clear speed, you do have to realize that sometimes this isn't possible. That's a slight mistake he made here again. On the other hand, though, his like team fight positioning is very, very good. Alright, so they're still chasing, which basically means that the Xin Zhao can come in from the back line. He sees the LeBlanc thing right here. Maokai is on a position on LeBlanc as well, so he goes like to the LeBlanc. Initially wanting to walk up to get to the other people. Gets the kill on LeBlanc, uses his ultimate right here whilst killing Echo, so Caitlyn can't damage him. Caitlyn basically forced to hit the Maokai, forced to hit the tank. Xin Zhao is able to deal a lot of damage. He can go for the Caitlyn here, looks like. Doesn't go for it actually. Peels back towards the Shen. I think in that situation he probably would have been able to kill the Caitlyn, because they really didn't have any mana or anything to do anything against him. Because if you can look at Leona's mana right here, she basically has nothing, maybe 1 stun she could have done, but that wouldn't have been enough. You have a lot of damage. He has a lot of damage at this point to just kill the Caitlyn, so that might have been the better play, but whatever he did, peeling back is also fine. Right there, stacking up the Qs on a target. If you're engaging any type of team fight, you can just stack up your Qs on the red buff, for example, or on a minion, or on another camp, and then instantly EQ in with a knock up to get an engage. This is a very easy engage tool you could use on Xin Zhao. You can hit anything, like turrets also work, dragons, scuttle crabs, doesn't matter, just hit something. Even wards would work. So if you have a sweeping trinket or a control ward and you just Q a ward twice, then the third Q will go onto the enemy champion, and that's just going to be an easy engage, because you can go E in, then Q them in the air, press W ult, and you basically would have one-shot them at that point if the target's very squishy. If not, then the engage would still be very good, because 1 or 2 extra auto attacks would probably kill them, or your team will be able to follow that up. So that's one of the types of engages that you can make. Using his W to slow there to potentially catch up, didn't really happen. Not sure how long he is. He still has some time left on his Rift Herald right now. Ideally, if I look back at it here, if he engages this fight or sees the enemy walk up towards the top side, he could have just used the Rift Herald in mid lane and then went to the fight. Because by that time, the Rift Herald would have probably gotten this turret and gotten this turret very low. But that's like more so hindsight than anything else. Gets the back. Goes further towards his Triforce, is basically now forced to use the Rift Herald into the mid lane to, well, because it was going to time out, so you definitely need to use it. So right now they're definitely looking for a fight, I think, unless they want to just let the Rift Herald die to the enemy team. Which actually looks like they will. Alright. So Shen is fighting Maokai on bot lane, which is, like, he's kind of out of position. Xin sees this and then is able to get that guy. And then also Caitlyn walking up too far. This basically is why Strix is very good, by the way. Like, if you just look at this fight, Strix also allows you to have an additional tenacity on top of the Merc threats as well. So against a team like this, like Leona, stun, ultimate, Caitlyn traps, LeBlanc E, Echo Stun, and Chantant, a lot of CC on the enemy team. Having something like a Strix with Merc combo will easily allow you to just walk through everything basically, and you're just going to be able to tank the CC very easily. Just something you see. So he goes in, uses his ult for additional damage, also using ult so Caitlyn can't really damage him, goes on the Caitlyn by flashing on her. And as you can see, the Strix basically, like all of the CC that you see happen right here, that Leona ult lasts no time at all, LeBlanc E also. And right here, the Strix also gave him additional HP to tank a lot longer. Now, you might see this as a situation where, I mean, it kind of doesn't matter, but also you got to look at it. This is a 2v5 situation, and he just wasted a lot of their time, getting them very low in the process. And the Maokai is still right here. He killed 2 targets, and the enemy, like his allies, are just pushing in the mid inhibitor. So all of this is basically allowed because Strix just gave him that amount of extra survivability, and obviously it does give him a good amount of damage as well. But it's really a perfect example of why Strix is such a good item, especially into CC having comps like this one. He gets his Triforce completed because he's very fed, of course, so you definitely want to get that extra damage from that item. Also synergizes really well with Strix, the Sheen combination, and yeah. Now, Dragon's gonna spawn quite soon, so he definitely wants to look towards getting the Infernal Dragon, and that's definitely what he's going for, so he's gonna fight right there. Using his ult to survive long. Strix again for the extra survivability there. Does get eventually assassinated by LeBlanc, but she does have to use Flash Ignite and basically her entire burst rotation for that, so it's basically a 3-4-1, which is fine, and they still get the dragon. This is basically the end of the game. Alright, so they pick up the Infernal Dragon. The enemy team basically realizes, well, with Infernal Soul there's nothing you can do, you just lose the game, and they surrender. Yeah, so overall, early aggression is very key, objective control is very key. There were some questionable decisions he made throughout the game, but at least seeing this now, you realize that that's just small things. If you look at the big picture for the early aggression and the objective control and just how to play with the Xin Zhao in team fights, engaging, using third Qs to get knockups, that's mainly the thing you want to do. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. This helped me out quite a lot. Also, if you're want to catch me streaming live on Twitch, you can. There is a link in the description. And yeah, see you guys in the next video. Bye!